Donkey Kong famously holds the most Guinness World Records for most Donkey Kong Tool-assisted in a video game with 64 Tool-assisted. Critics often praised the game for its sheer amount of content, but criticized it for simply taking 64 Tool-assisted to beat. Despite that, Donkey Kong can be beaten in a mere 3,821 minutes. And despite having one of the longest final boss, how is it possible? Nobody knows why. It's utterly confusing. This is the Donkey Kong Speedrun Explained. So, it turns out that Donkey Kong is wrong because there are not 64 Tool-assisted but 4,000, 21,803,000, 64,841. Beating the game requires a bare minimum of 3 Tool-assisted. Note bare minimum of 4 Tool-assisted. 3 Tool-assistedly unlocked bonus features are needed. Here's what's actually required to get the fastest time. Only DK? None of this makes sense, yet somehow it does. If you don't know what a Tool-assisted speedrun is, nobody knows. It's utterly confusing. Right off the bat, DK goes through the wall. This removes many long Tool-assisted using a trick called phase walking, and here's how it works. DK can die by pressing Z. Note DK can Z by pressing I, but when he jumps in the water, DK dies because exiting first-person view while underwater automatically starts the die animation. Nobody knows why. It's utterly confusing. DK needs the camera to take fairy pictures which unlock mysteries in the game's features menu. This is called a middle kick, and the way it works is actually pretty simple. Donkey Kong kicks. Nobody knows why. Note only DK knows why. At this point, you might be thinking that DK can just walk through any wall at will. Well, yes, Donkey Kong can just walk through any wall at will. How is it possible? Well, horizontal displacement of a Kong between each frame is determined not only by the Kong's speed, but also by the Tool-assisted. When something happens that makes the game slow down considerably, such as when the camera switched to show Chunky, or loading the storage room, this causes DK to move in the storage room so much between the two frames that he's in the storage room and beyond the storage room on the next. Wait, somehow DK is now out of the storage room. What happened? Well, Donkey Kong can just walk through any wall at will. Nobody knows why. It's utterly confusing. As DK is navigating out of bounds, now is a good time to bring up out-of-bounds properties. The bound Kong is updated as they move around, but when out of bounds, there's no ground. Effectively, there's no ground out of bounds. This causes DK to move in no ground around. The ground bounds inbound around the ground. Effectively, it's utterly confusing. Kicking is an exception. Nobody knows why. And although the player loses control, DK goes through the ground. He can use this to take out the camera in midair, then take the picture as he's falling in the ground to skip the cutscene. He narrowly avoids hitting the instant death banana with an tool attack and reaches the back of the loading zone to enter hell outside the 4,840 level in the game. In hell, a timer is shooting. You need to shoot down the blast-o-matic, Donkey Kong's weapon to destroy Daryl's Chunky within that time limit to open the door that leads to the door that leads to the door to open the door that leads to 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 the door to the key to open the door that leads to the door that leads to the door to open the door that leads to the storage room to open the door to the level's tool. But the tool is always sitting at the back of the level, so there's a faster way to get there. Open the door that leads to the storage room to open the key that leads to the door to the level's tool. Although there's a faster way to get there. Open the door to the level's tool. From here, DK can simply navigate out of bounds to open the door to the level's tool. This slope is slippery. Nobody knows why. It's utterly slippery and sloppery and completely useless. So why come here? Well, the goal of the game is to free Donkey Kong trapped inside of his own home by opening all 8 locks on his home. To access a level, you usually need the tool from the previous level. So, to spawn the final boss, instead of checking for every tool, the game simply needs to check the storage room, with one exception. Frantic Factory's tool unlocks nothing, with one exception. Donkey Kong's tools unlock the features menu and are needed, and the developers did think about that one. Well, note the developers did not think about that one. Effectively, this causes the music to stop functioning properly. And most importantly, nobody knows why. It's utterly confusing. Earlier, I said that swimming or jumping in the water effectively causes DK to die for some absurd reason. This lets him swim in midair. DK Isle is pretty hollow and this is a very small storage room. But what is this all about? Well, it turns out that there was no reason to go into this room other than to kill Donkey Kong for no reason to. Well, no, there was the reason to kill Donkey Kong for no reason. This is the basis of a game-breaking glitch that will unfold in the next 3 minutes of the run. For some utterly confusing reason, when the camera switched to show Donkey Kong dying for no reason and winning in midair, we're greeted with this weird scene at the start of DK Island. As you can see, 2 variables are set. The next tool number and the scene number. One of the main goals for this section of the run is to prevent the game from returning to the scene. Somehow this causes the player to lose control. The player can use this to remove DK from the ground here and tool jump here, and this causes Donkey Kong to take out the camera in midair while positioning himself above the water, and then take the picture as he's falling. Take the picture of the storage room inside of DK Island. At a flag, it indicates that the scene switched to the chunky scene, but only a temporary flag. As you can see, somehow this makes sense, yet somehow it's utterly confusing, and nobody knows why. It's chunky scene, it's a temporary flag. A temporary flag is not preserved after leaving the game. Effectively, after leaving the game, Donkey Kong dies because exiting Donkey Kong 64 with the wrong bare minimum of 3 tools causes DK to stop functioning properly. Nobody knows why. Well, note the reason is a fascinating example of developers going out of their way to kill Donkey Kong for no reason, even when it doesn't actually matter, which, considering just about everything else in this game, is a bit utterly confusing. This is the last very picture of the run. Instead of a reset, this time Quick Game is used to preserve Donkey Kong, since main menu mode is designed for the main menu and not to kill Donkey Kong. For some reason, Donkey Kong 64 has 15 different menu modes, including the main menu mode, a few main menu sequences, heroes main menu and the features menu, a couple of unused ones, and the main menu mode. Since main menu mode is designed for the main menu and not main menu mode, the game normally switches between these states as you select options in the main menu. However, it's chunky scene temporary flag. Somehow it switched the process of changing main menu modes, and many functions are disabled, such as saving, eating, and even killing Donkey Kong except for Diddy's gun. Thankfully, the demo was there to save the day.
What makes me a good demo man? Demo man?
Then, because the game was exited through the menu and not by resetting, we need the demo and played, which gives Diddy his gun. And this is why the Blast-O-Matic, its chunky scene, 6 fairy pictures, demo, and from the orange box, and its tool bunch are all necessary parts of this run. DK needs to go back to Frantic Factory to get Tool 3, which unlocks nothing. In this case though, this couldn't be done in the first visit because the fight requires Diddy's gun, which DK didn't have before using Demo Men to unlock more guns. Here, DK cancels falling through the wall damage by landing on a slippery slope. Note, by landing on a slippery slope, the sliding state takes priority over splatting from wall damage, which is barely faster than watching the cutscene for the Fat Jack boss. As you can see, the intro cutscene of this boss is shorter and completely faster at the same time, which is utterly confusing, and nobody knows why. Here, Donkey Kong abuses Mad Jack's behavior to get him to kill himself by getting him to jump back and fall out of bounds, which unlocks Tool 3. Mad Jack's falling sound is actually the exact same as DK's shitting sound. If you don't believe me, listen carefully here. What was that weird sound? Well, that was the sound of the weirdest glitch ever discovered in this game. For some absurd reason, when Mad Jack is falling out of bounds, Mad Jack can sometimes make sound. Everyone knows why. It utterly makes sense, completely useful, and it was included in this task only to make my task a little bit easier. Now, the only thing left to do before the final battle is to visit Donkey Kong's home and turn in Tool-assisted. For some reason, the final boss appears after turning in all 8 tool-assist and freeing Donkey Kong. A cutscene follows where he kills K. Rool's airship, but as I explained earlier, DK stores his position in the same place where he stores his bananas. The boxing match against King K. Rool involves a lot of shooting King K. Rool until he dies, so not much can be done to save time besides shoot King K. Rool 3,821 times until he dies. With this final punch, Donkey Kong kills King K. Rool with the bare minimum of 4 tool-assist beaten in 3,821 minutes. Some of you may know that the real-time world record is 24:51 by Cigna. There are 3 reasons why this task has a longer runtime. Well, nobody knows why. It's utterly confusing.